Welcome to the Rich and Rob Show, everybody. We got a juicy one today, Rich. Ben Shapiro says Michael Moore said the stupidest thing Ben has ever heard, so this should be interesting. Indeed, Ben has heard a lot of things in his lifetime, but I must say I like your hat, Jerusalem hat. When you've got a British hat, what do you call that, the Union Jack? I like that. All right, let's get into it.
Michael Moore, who used to be seen for what he is, a crazy left-winger. So Michael Moore, you'll recall in 2004, there was a big controversy. If you remember this far back, I do, because I covered politics then. In 2004, there was a huge controversy at the Democratic National Convention because Michael Moore, who was a propagandist documentarian, was seated in a presidential box at the DNC with Jimmy Carter. And that was controversial because Michael Moore's a nutcase. Now Michael Moore has become one of the voices of the Democratic Party because that's how far left the Democratic Party has moved over time.
Oh, that's a good point of reference right there, Rich. When a fringy becomes mainstream in something, that shows where things are at now. Things have gone a long way. The confusing part is that Moore did say he was voting for Trump in 2016 because of how Trump was going to tax Ford if they moved their manufacturing plants to Mexico. That's true, but Moore is about Michigan first, I think, so maybe that's why. I don't know. All right, let's get back to Ben.
Again, you want to know why people like Joe Rogan and Elon Musk are now talking about voting Republican? It's because the Democratic Party is now enthralled to people like Michael Moore. Michael Moore, again, here he was yesterday, talking about Israel and Gaza and suggesting that Joe Biden has to abandon Israel in order to win over his left flank. Again, let's be real about this. The broad spectrum of Americans are much more supportive of Israel than they are of Hamas. But the Democratic Party is kind of split on the issue, which is wild since Hamas is a genocidal terror group that murders gay people, seeks to kill every Jew in sight, hates women, and all the rest. Here was Michael Moore suggesting falsely that Joe Biden is enthralled to the authoritarian Bibi, which again, that's hilarious because Bibi is an elected official in a coalition government with his political opposition who visited Washington, D.C., Benny Gantz did literally yesterday. But here's Michael Moore, dolt.
Do you think Donald Trump is the threat that he is, and Joe Biden is gambling by aligning himself closely with Netanyahu at the risk of American democracy?
Absolutely. And gambling by aligning himself with an authoritarian in Tel Aviv, somebody who is facing a number of felonious charges, who was supposed to stand trial this past fall, and that all got shoved aside because now there's a war. And so we can't put our prime minister on trial. Joe Biden, and I plead with him, do not put Trump back in the White House. I am not going to be able to go on enough shows on TV between now and the election to convince literally millions of young people that you got to vote because Trump's a bad guy.
Michael Moore, by the way, is such an idiot that he literally says in the same interview that Israel should focus its ire not on radical Muslims who just murdered 1,200 of its citizens. Instead, they should focus on the evils of Christians. That's how out of touch these morons are.
According to my knowledge of history, the enemies of Israel who have been persecuted, the Israelis, the Jewish people of this world have been persecuted for 5,000 years. But for the last 2,000 years, most of the persecution has come from white, European-centric Christians. That's been your enemy.
Even based upon the premises he is setting forth, it is an astoundingly bad argument he is making. He is essentially saying that because one group did bad things for a long time, that it completely exonerates or exculpates others from doing atrocious things in the present moment. How do people become so blind and stupid, Rich? I mean, I get that you studied philosophy at Cambridge and I studied at Rutgers. Two of the top philosophy programs in the world, people. Nobody should need a philosophy degree to recognize a pathetic argument when it's out there. All right, let's get back into this mental travesty we're being subjected to. There should be a law or something.
No Palestinian helped to build Auschwitz. No Palestinian stood on the docks of New York City when boatloads of Jewish refugees trying to escape the Holocaust came here to be protected by this country and were turned away at the docks in New York and sent back to Germany to die. No Palestinian did that. No Palestinian ran the Spanish Inquisition. Your enemy Your enemy is not the Palestinian people. It is white Christian European people who have been slaughtering Jews for the last 2,000 years.
Jesus, dear God, he is beyond an idiot with this nonsense. First off, why does he automatically go to white people first? What does that have anything to do with anything here? Second, those white Christians and black Christians and other Christians in the West are among the biggest Zionists in the world. They think Israel has a right to exist and support them. Indeed, they do. Even Orthodox Jews like the Lubavitch and Hasidim in Brooklyn don't believe in Israel's right to exist, as they think the troubles that Israel is having is Hashem's. That's what they call God, so they don't utter his name. It is Hashem's judgment upon Israel for not abiding by his commandments, whereas many Christians today support Israel. The sad thing is, for some weird reason, I want to like this guy, Michael Moore, but he's so out to lunch and such a douche that he makes it difficult. You want to keep watching? Yes, I want to see Ben's response to that diatribe of turds.
Okay, let me take that just one moment there. I have to recover. I'm going to say this in very considered fashion. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That's legitimately the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Yes, it turns out there was a lot of Christian anti-Semitism over the course of the last couple thousand years. That does not forestall the fact that Palestinians crossed a border like a couple of months ago and murdered 1,200 Jews and still are holding 134 hostages, including 6 Americans. The Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip overwhelmingly support Hamas. That the greatest threat to Jews on planet Earth right now is Palestinians and their supporters. That is just a fact. There is no other. That's simply true. It doesn't mean that every single Palestinian is a terrorist. It doesn't mean that every single Palestinian wants to kill Jews. It does mean that a huge number of Palestinians do want to kill Jews, and a huge number of Palestinians support terrorism. That does not mean that civilians should not be treated as civilians, but that happens to be a reality.
Well, we basically agreed with Ben on that. Whether or not Michael Moore is embraced by Jewish liberals remains to be seen, but his weak style of argumentation knows no bounds. Oh, I may need to see a neurosurgeon to remove the damaged parts now, but I'm gonna have wine instead. I think I'll join you. Well, that does it for today, people. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rich and Rob Show. Cheers!